Welcome to a weekly episode of Talk. We're your host, Eddie Marmolejo.
And Jaime Moreno.
It doesn't get any less crazy out there. AOC has now said that all Latinos are black. We will dive into those comments shortly. Minneapolis has voted to defund the police.
Wow, they actually went through the word, huh?
Yes. And statues are coming down more and more and more every day, including now they want to go after Jesus, Abraham Lincoln, and Ulysses S. Grant. Never mind that Lincoln and Grant fought to end slavery, but hey, I guess.
I didn't know Jesus was racist.
And finally, Trump gets fact-checked by the Washington Post. Well, regarding crime, and we will reveal that shortly. But first, Jaime.
First, please don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Please follow us on social media. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and of course on YouTube for the full episode, right? To see our full show. Sorry. Please don't forget to share. Tell your friends and family to share our content. We're here to provide actual information. We're here to provide truth in the midst of so much confusion, in the midst of so much talking that we need to get to the bottom of everything, right? So please don't forget to subscribe, Talk. And let's move on to the subject because it's like so much is going on this week, Eddie. That it seems like every day there's one problem over another. And all these social media, all these news articles, all these things are coming out. Every day it's chaotic. It's so overwhelming of information. But not only is it overwhelming information, there's a lot of misinformation, right? Mm-hmm. So these liberals and elites are talking about how we need to stop disinformation and misinformation, right. And we need to stop and put an end to not lies, but fake assumptions or just misinformation in general, right? So the liberals and the elites in the country, right, the social media platforms, the influencers and all that are doing this quote unquote war, not war, they're fighting to maintain information and accuracy and debunk the right and conservatives and Trump, who always share misinformation, who always share disinformation, who always share fake news, and they're always lying. They're fighting that. But they're not realizing that they themselves are also passing on misinformation, are also passing on inaccurate information, inaccurate history portrayals, inaccurate interpretation of a political ideology. They themselves are also spreading, and more rapidly than conservatives actually, disinformation and misinformation. It's so rapid. I mean, this week we posted how Joe Biden literally said 120 million Americans have died from COVID. Where was the left? Where was the influencers? Where were these truthers, right?
Right.
Talking about like, Joe Biden.
It's funny because your post called out Twitter in their fact check, right?
Yeah.
And then my post was like, well, Joe Biden, here he goes again, making another gaffe. This guy has killed through his gaffes. Okay, not him directly. Through his gaffes, this man directly has killed more people than Mao, Hitler, and Stalin combined. Okay, Joe Biden, through his gaffes, has killed 77% of the U.S. population with his remarks on gun control and now COVID. I mean, this guy. I mean, why
killed the whole country pretty much? Yes. So these liberals, the Democrats, the left, right, who are claiming to be, we're trying to stop the spread of disinformation and misinformation from conservative liars who are just conspiracy theories and nutcases. And Joe Biden says this. I mean, look at our post, right? We pretty much cleared out. Yeah. Why didn't they hold him accountable, right? Why didn't they say, Joe Biden, fact check, Joe Biden makes a mistake. Joe Biden over exaggerates the death toll in America from COVID. They're not doing it. So they're allowing misinformation and disinformation to keep growing. Right.
They're going to cover
only
Joe
because
Biden.
they don't want to make Joe Biden look bad. Right. Because, he might lose the election if he does. It's not about winning the election or not. It's about being honest, right? It's about truth, right?
The media is supposed to report and be neutral when it comes to the subject matter. But as we pointed out, more than 80% of all media is left wing. So I mean, good luck with that.
Yeah, seriously. So it's like, where's the double standards? And I think the post says there's a double standard, right? It's a double standard. If we're gonna be stopping misinformation and disinformation in all platforms of the media, right, in social media, then you have to apply that rule across the board, whether Republican, Democrat, liberal, or conservative, whether far left or far right, you got to apply it across the board, and not just on one group, right? So, and not only do we see it on Joe Biden's thing, it's what's happening across the country with the vandalism of monuments and the attempt to just erase history.
Well, I just don't think people even know history anymore. I don't think they're really educated on history. Come on, look, you went after the 54th Massachusetts mural, an all-black regiment. I saw a post today where the statue of Jimi Hendrix was defaced.
Why Jimi Hendrix?
Again, okay.
Wasn't he black?
The statue where Abraham Lincoln, okay, is according to the article I read was, what is it? I forget the term. Anyways, Abraham Lincoln is over a black former slave now because the shackles were free. They want to go over that statue. Never mind that statue was funded by free slaves. Okay, never mind about that. And then you want to go after U.S. Grant. Okay, no, I'm not even done. The list still goes on. You went after U.S. Grant. You know the general that actually won the Civil War? I mean, if you study Civil War history, and Hyman knows this, I'm a big Civil War buff, right? If it weren't for U.S. Grant's strategy, we would have lost.
Mm-hmm.
We would have lost.
Exactly.
We would have lost, okay? But that man not only goes on to win the Civil War, he basically is president. He becomes president and goes through the Reconstruction era as well. And you know what he did? He sent troops to the South to fight off the KKK. That's the next statue you want to bring down, okay? And I'm like, why? He said, and then George Washington. Everybody's like, well, George Washington owned slaves. So did Ulysses S. Grant. He owned one slave, and he actually didn't buy the slave. He inherited the slave from his wife, but he freed him before the Civil War started. And George Washington was married to Betsy Ross. Betsy Ross was an abolitionist. Now, if you look at conversations by George Washington, he said that even though I have owned slaves, I never want. The sources point out that he began questioning slavery during the Revolutionary War, as you know, as the British were trying to use them to fight the Americans, but also how blacks were used in troops. We would in continental troops as well, right? And he said, I'm questioning this. And then as the years passed on, right, he said, you know what we need is abolition through legislative means. That battle took 84 years to get through. So for all these people that are arguing, oh, well, slavery was forgotten after we started America, was fun. No, it was debated. America was debated even by the founding fathers. It's just we didn't have political will, right?
And not only that, that's why we had the whole 3/5 compromise. Yes, to finally settle the question.
Yeah,
I mean, wasn't it in the Constitution where it literally says no more slave trade after no more slave trade until 1805 or something like that? 1800.
No, that was I forget the.
That was a compromise, no?
That wasn't the compromise. It was an act of Congress, but it was around 1815 or 1805, somewhere around there.
I thought it was 1800. They were going to no more slave trade in America after 1800.
But for some reason, 1805 keeps popping in my head, but I will have to look into it.
We'll look into that. Yeah,
I
know there's some written. I don't know if it was the Constitution or an act that it was ended.
The point is this, okay? I can go on statues of people all day long. George Jefferson, all these people, right? The point is this: you're going after the people that established a universal doctrine of equality, right? Even though in their own times they were trying to not only to implement it, but try to perfect it, and it just takes time. You just can't do. Rome wasn't built in a day. America's not going to be built in one day. It takes time. Okay, it takes time. So I don't think these people that are protesting know their history. I just don't think they do, because if they knew their history, and I'm not talking revisionist history that we're seeing today. If you dove in and you do the independent research, right, on the backstories and all this, you would not be talking, you would not be marching out there like you are today. To support Democrats on the issue of race is really oxymoronic to me. It really is. It really is. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know, Hyman.
Yeah, well, because it's actually moronic, because the Democratic Party has been the established party who kept slavery, who kept systemic racism, who kept segregation in the South, who literally fought to keep slavery. I mean, the Democratic Party, even in the 70s and 80s, right? When they say, oh, Democrats flipped, right?
That never happened.
No, they never happened.
And
they had never happened. So that's the biggest false lie. But you know what they say? You know what Goebbels, or what was the Nazi propagandist say? You keep telling people lies, they're going to believe it.
And that's the thing. What people are going to understand is that the Republicans did not obtain a majority in the South towards, I want to say, 1994, 94. Yeah. That's 30 years after the Civil Rights Act. So this whole thing, the Democrats and Republicans switched, never happened. I think it was one person one person switched. Never get his name, but it was one person. And I'm like, so that's it? And then just think about it. Let's just think about it this way. Why would, I don't know, Democrats switch to the party that ended basically the laws that held your region as a stronghold for, I don't know, 80 years? That just makes no sense to me. But this is the thing.
Pretty much.
You know, so these are the things you got to look at. I just don't think people know their history anymore, man.
And not only, it's not that they know it could be that they don't know their history as one part, but I think they're coming from a viewpoint of today where it's, how do I say this? Men have flaws. Leaders, they have flaws.
Right.
You know, George Washington had slaves, but he was a founding father, right? I mean, Ulysses Grant, for goodness sake, was the one who led the victory of the Union over the South, right? He had his flaws. Abraham Lincoln, I mean, he has no flaws. He's a perfect man. But, you know, I'm just kidding. But what I'm saying is that all these leaders of history, all these major names, Christopher Columbus, you know, the Pilgrims and all that, yes, in their time, they did make mistakes. They did do atrocities. Yes, they colonized, they, you know, Cortez, for goodness sake, wiped, you know, most of the population. Yes, it happened. Yes, it was part of it. It's part of history. It is part of history. Was it right? No. Was a lot of stuff justified? No. But it's the context of their own history, of their own time period. What's going on with this revisionist history, or these cancel culture people, they want to get rid of that, right?
Yeah.
They want to never hear about it again. They only want to talk about, you know, indigenous and the slave side and their point of view, which is great, which we should know and should be able to learn from it. I'm not saying don't use indigenous and perspective. It doesn't hurt anybody. But the thing is that that's their time frame. Could they have perfected it? Based on history, they couldn't. I mean, based on history, I mean, the founders couldn't end slavery because it would divide the country. Literally, it would be a civil war in 1780, right? It wouldn't even be a union.
Just when we founded the country. Like,
so that's what people don't. They had a compromise. They had a compromise. Okay, you know what? We can't change this right now. We can't.
It is not even that.
We want to keep a union together, and we'll deal with it as it goes by. Maybe, you know, as time goes by, we can deal with this as time progresses. And obviously, like Eddie said, slavery was solved by civil war. We finally addressed the matter violently. Unfortunately, it had to be violent instead of diplomatic means, because it had to come down to that. So tearing down statues isn't going to change history. Tearing down monuments is not going to change what happened. It isn't going to fix the problem that happened.
Yeah.
Right? So taking down George Washington's statue is not going to change the fact that slavery existed in America. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not going to go away. It's not going to be like in the movies where you go back in time and change history, you know? It's not a Family Guy episode where, you know, they're going back in time with Stewie, Brian, and what's his name?
Well, I think Avengers Endgame proved that you can't change time. You can't change history by going back in time. That was
even at that, even Endgame couldn't even solve that problem, right? So it's kind of like you want to change history, but you can't. It happened. Unfortunately, it's a terrible history. It's bad. People made mistakes. People, you know, it was what it was, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like we said last week, we're going to be judged by future generations, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're going to be judged. And right now, we might think that we're doing the right thing, that we're fighting the good cause, but maybe our generation down the road might be like, we're stupid. We're idiots. Or we made matters worse. I don't know. I don't know what the outcome of our decisions today is.
It depends what side.
Right? Well, it depends on what side, whatever. But, you know, things can change. I mean,
yeah, I know.
Who knew, right? So what I'm trying to say, Eddie, and I'm sorry I'm interrupting you, is that tearing down statues, getting rid of statues is not going to change what happened.
Mm-hmm.
No matter how much you do it, no matter how much vandalism, no matter how much you destroy it, it's not going to change history.
You know what?
The way we're going to change our life is by changing our mentality, changing our strategy, doing things better, progressing, right? Stop blaming a lot of people for your own shortcomings, right? Sometimes we got to own up to our own, right? Sometimes, and I'm not speaking in general, but you can blame others. Sometimes people block opportunities and you don't get hired, and it happens. It happens in a job. I didn't get picked for that position. I was qualified. Well, it happened in that business. That business needs to change, and so on and so forth. Does it mean you have to be stuck there? No, you can have the right to go on to a different business where they can appreciate what you've done, what you do, what you bring to the table, right? So the same thing. We're not going to sit there and loathe over, oh, I didn't get the position because of this. It's racism. Well, if it is, oh, well, leave that company. It's not worth staying in it.
Yeah. No, and this is what pisses me off when I see people like Trevor Noah from The Daily Show. And he made a comment and says like, whoa, you don't need those statues. You could just read them from a book. This coming from the guy, right, who grew up probably in apartheid South Africa, who came to the United States, blames systematic racism, but is now the host of a show and a millionaire that lives in a fancy house here in California. I'm like, really, dude? And you're blaming systematic racism? Come on.
Seriously, he is an immigrant who came. Yeah, exactly.
He basically achieved the American dream and is talking about systematic racism. Really? Come on, man. Come on, dude.
And how it's affected him? How? He's a comedian.
Here you are, you and I, native-born Americans, right, creating a podcast, trying to reach his level, and we're working on it. He was lucky enough to immigrate here, do whatever he had to do, work hard, and, you know, and become successful, gets a successful comedian. Now he's the host of The Daily Show, right? And he's talking about systematic racism. Dude, you left apartheid South Africa. I don't know if when you actually left South Africa, but you left apartheid. And I mean,
doesn't he have a book talking about it?
If I can compare apartheid to Jim Crow, and given the level of violence and all that, I don't even want to go to that discussion. The problem is they were both systematic racist regimes at the time. And the thing is, you came to America and achieved the dream, and you're trying to sell now us, right, native-born people, about systematic racism. Get out of here. Get out of here.
Yeah, pretty much. Like, how can you? So he's a rich millionaire because of systematic racism prevented him? Like, no. So he's lecturing us from a standpoint what he would consider of wealth and privilege. He is wealth and privilege.
Wealth and privilege. So is Don Lemon. I mean, like, come on.
Yeah, he's wealth and privilege. So the same people who are criticizing wealth and privilege
are wealthy and privileged.
Are wealth and privilege. Like, really?
Yeah, and he
like, how does that even work? Oh, because they want to keep us American people dumb and divided and fighting over racism. When in reality, we can do way much more better. We can do better together as a group, as a country, united. We can do much better. If you don't believe me, look at the protests. Do I agree with the protests? Not to some extent, but look at the unity that came out. We gotta take that into consideration. A lot of people came out. Thousands of people came out for this Black Lives Matters march and end police brutality. A lot of people came out. That's good in the sense that look at how much unity, the power we are as a group of people against these elite rich who lecture us from their multi-million-dollar homes, from their multi-million-dollar pay books, from the multi-billion-dollar banking accounts, who can do whatever, say whatever, work whatever, while us working class Americans have to live paycheck to paycheck, and they're lecturing us on things that we're suffering. It doesn't make sense. So it's kind of like I said, they're just trying to keep us down, right? And Trevor Noah, like Eddie says, he is not where he's at because of systemic racism. He's at where he's at because he worked hard and he earned it. Merit-based society. That's America, right? So it's just ridiculous. And
sit it there. We can go on for hours about this, but let's move on to the next topic, which since we're on it, and now Minneapolis voted to defund the police. I mean, this is right. This is all together where Minneapolis now votes to defund the police. It was a 12-0 vote this Friday.
I'm not surprised there.
Yeah, so they apparently have to go to a ratification process and all that stuff. It's not that by Monday all those police officers are laid out. No, this is just the beginning of the funding of the police to what they're gonna call like more true public servants. Okay, but that's not what's the interesting part. The interesting part is that 3 of the council people that voted for him now have private security, and they are charging. According to the New York Post, they are charging taxpayers $4,300 a day. Now, Jaime, can you make the math for week, month, and year on these for taxpayers?
Did you say $4,300 a day? $4,300 a day.
Yes.
For private security.
Yeah. Taxpayers.
And who's paying for it? Taxpayers?
Taxpayers.
Wait, we're trying to fight to defund the police, but we're funding private security.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So $4,300 a day, that equals about $30,000 a week, which is pretty much 30 times $120,000 a month.
Mm-hmm. Times 12.
Which is like $1.4 million a year. Yeah, $1.4 million a year.
I mean, if
that
we
means
project it, right? Let's say they eliminate the police and what the projections are going to be. That's what these 3 council people are going to be, or taxpayers are going to be paying for the protection of these council people. Meanwhile, no ordinary citizen is going to have any protection, real and true police protection. Instead, what they're going to have is peacekeepers. They're going to replace them with peacekeepers, right? Who will have a holistic approach to securing their neighborhoods.
So you're telling me that they literally just voted to dismantle the police, right? Which is the protective unit, which is supposed to protect the community, keep people safe.
Yes.
And then 3 council people are literally paying for the same services they just got rid of at a higher rate.
Yeah.
What is the average salary of a cop in Minneapolis?
$64,000 a year.
So you're telling me, let's say 1.4 million, right?
Yeah.
Dollars a year, right?
Right.
Assuming that they're going to keep it for a year. Out of 65,000, you said?
64.
64,000? Mm-hmm. That means that 22 police officers, 22 families,
right,
22 households are out of a job, don't have an income, can't afford the rent anymore, can't afford their food anymore. They probably can't even afford their health insurance anymore. They probably can't even get a retirement anymore. They're going to be cash strapped until they find a job because 3 council people decided to use private security instead of the police force because they got rid of police force because they got too much money, but they have enough money to pay for private security.
Yeah. and that private security is going to be replaced with the Department of Community Safety and Violence Prevention. Sounds like
what the hell is that?
It sounds like an elementary school program.
So they're gonna be replaced by hall monitors?
Yeah, there you go. By hall.
So you got rid of the police
To replace them with
protect the
hall monitors.
community with hall monitors. Oh my gosh. Oh my God. This is
rhetoric,
so
this
ridiculous,
anti-police,
dude.
this
This is
anti-police
so
rhetoric.
dumb.
People need to understand that this anti-police rhetoric and votes like this is gonna get people hurt. It's gonna get people hurt, man. Poor people.
Man, if I'm a criminal, this is perfect.
I know, that's what I'm saying.
Ain't
Like,
no punk hall monitor gonna do to me.
I mean, what are they gonna
What
do?
the hell?
Yeah, what are they gonna do? We're like, I was telling you, like, it reminds me.
Stop! Stop! I'm a hall monitor. I'm gonna give you a citation. What the hell? Get out of here.
It reminds me of that scene in Demolition Man, like I told you. With the cop goes in with the little computer, and he's like, "How do I approach the subject?" And then the computer tells him how to do it, right? And then, like, I guess he doesn't comply the first time. He's like, a criminal responded to me with an inappropriate response, and the computer tells him to do it again and add or else. I'm like, you gotta watch this clip of Demolition Man. Just look it up. Like, look up Demolition Man or else, and then you'll see what I'm talking about. That's where I think all these cities are trying to head to. And I'm like, you're gonna hurt poor people. This will affect poor people. This will increase crime. Like,
and it's just ridiculous. I mean, I totally agree with you 100% on that. That the crime rate's gonna go high up in the city. I mean, it's pretty much giving criminals a free pass because there's no police force to arrest them, right? But what's more hypocritical and double is that they got rid of the police force that's supposed to protect these counselors or council members, and they get private security. Like, it doesn't make sense. It's just like,
and I don't mean your expense, but we had the expense of the tax.
At tax dollars expense, you know? Like, what the hell?
That's what I'm talking about. Like, this is people need to wake up to this in these cities. The same people that are trying out there to telling you that, oh, we should be more reflective of our communities are the same people that are making things worse through whatever means necessary, man. I don't care if you want to put more black people in police and everything. The data doesn't prove that the race is going to change the outcome of a situation, okay? And you're going to end up paying for it. Because when you're going to call, you're going to be like, oh, what kind of situation do you have? Well, I don't think we have enough police to send to your place right now. I'm sorry, deal with it.
or in other words, like some memes will say, we're sending our thoughts and prayers.
For domestic abuse, press 1. Speak to an operator, please hold. Wait time, 3 hours. You know, all these things. I mean, I don't know how you're going to do it, right? I'm just like, it's bad, and it's bad for... It's just bad for people that are low income and all that. And I'm like, I
want to see. You know what? I actually want to see this happen. I actually want to see the hall monitors walking on the streets protecting Minneapolis. I want to see this.
And then what?
Because I want to see how ridiculous this is going to be. I want to see how the disaster this program is going to become. Honestly, in my view, I think it's going to be a disaster. I probably will be proven wrong. Maybe. I don't know. But I have a pretty good hunch that it's going to be a disaster.
Yep, it just sounds bad, dude.
There's a crime in progress. Go call the hall monitor. The hall monitor runs to the scene. Stop, sir, stop it. Stealing is bad. Don't do it. No. They're not even going to do that. They'll be like, sir, let's read. Why do you steal? Did you grow up poor, sir? Do you have a financial need that you have to steal? Ain't no way we're going to sit there and do a nice psychological evaluation about his upbringing and why he's doing what he's doing. He's probably going to run out of there he's probably going to push over the freaking hall monitor and run with the merchandise. I mean, like, how ridiculous is the sound? And what's even more ridiculous is they're going to pay $1.4 million of taxpayer money.
Well, that's just for those three. I mean, if all of them
still.
Right.
Like, wait, they want to get rid of cops because they're a danger to the community, but they want to get private security because they need protection. Like, it doesn't make any sense.
You're right. Yeah. No,
So you're pretty much telling us that, you know what? We do need police force to protect us. We do need these police forces because apparently you're proving that we need them by getting a private security company, which is pretty much the same thing as a police officer. The only difference is that they can't arrest you, or they can arrest you, but they don't have that authority to arrest, right? And put you in jail. They might just, hold off and detain the person until the real law enforcement arrives. But then that is pretty much the same thing. You're asking for protection by another group of people, more expensive, because you got rid of the people who were protecting you in the first place. Because the people who are protecting you in the first place are evil and bad, but yet security companies, security guards are good and are necessary for your protection. It just doesn't make sense. It just doesn't. It's just a hypocrite. It's dumb. It's double standard. It just proves by action, not by word, by action, that we need police force to protect the communities.
Yeah.
We do need them. Yes, there was mistakes. Yes, the officers who handled Mr. Floyd did wrong, and they should be held accountable. Just like we said here in Mem Talk, they need to be held accountable. We need to weed the bad cops out, but don't get rid of the police department because of some bad weeds.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. There's bad people everywhere, man. There's bad people everywhere. You're not gonna get rid of them. And speaking of bad, and now let's move on and speak it because we'll see what happens here. But speaking of bad thoughts, let's go to Trump.
Oh, wasn't there before? I know we're gonna move on, but I know there was an episode of SpongeBob where he was a police officer.
Whoa! We're not. SpongeBob is controversial right now, sir. I don't want to get.
Oh, never mind. Then let's just move on. I don't want my house to be burned.
But speaking of bad thoughts, Trump got fact checked. Okay, and
tell me something new.
Yeah. Well, you are going to tell him something new because you're the one that found this. So,
oh yeah.
So Jaime went to the reliable, trustworthy, and all-knowing Washington Post, and this article fact-checked Trump on the fact that he said that 20 out of the 20 most violent cities in America are Democrat-run cities. That means they're liberally run cities. These are the cities that reflect their communities, diversity, so forth, whatever you want to put in there. But anyways, the point is he's wrong. 20 out of 20 Democrat cities are not the most violent cities. That's not true. Exactly. It's not 20 out of 20. So, Jaime, can you dive into this fact-checking by the all-knowing Washington Post? The people that brought down Nixon. Those people.
Well, that Washington Post, I have no respects. This Washington Post, I don't even know why I subscribed to them. Only because I got a deal for the whole year. That's probably why I subscribed to them. Yeah, well, and because we gotta get articles and analyze. We gotta research. So we subscribe to the Washington Post, not because we think they're the best. It's because we need to. We need data. We need data. Yeah. You gotta see it's part of our research. You got to pay for these articles, so you got to research it. We got to pay it, whatever.
Anyways, go ahead.
Literally, the headline of the article says, "Trump claims that most violent cities in America are run by Democrats. He is wrong." That's the headline. And then he goes on this opinion piece. These experts, right? This expert goes on to say in the article, right? To say that Trump is wrong. Because he said 20 of the most dangerous cities are ran by Democrats. That's what Trump said.
Mm-hmm.
The fact check, according to this writer, this analyst, this expert, this authority in politics, said that 18 of the 20 most dangerous cities in America are ran by Democrats. So Trump is lying because he said 2020 instead of 18 out of 20. And then he goes on to say that, well, you have two cities, two out of the 20 most dangerous cities in America are independents. On paper, right? In my analysis, or Eddie and my analysis is that those two independents in the report are probably Democrat because on paper, there's cities where you're nonpartisan. So on paper, there's no party affiliation, but the person's voting record and voter registration, it's either Republican or Democrat. So you might have like here in the city of Moreno Valley, nonpartisan, but everyone who sits in the council and the mayor are Democrat. So it's like, even though they say nonpartisan on paper for the position, their voter registration ID pretty much says they're Democrat, right? So same thing with those two cities. So the writer so eloquently and so intelligently says that 17 out of 20 cities are run by Democrats. But Trump is wrong. He's still wrong. Even though the data pretty much proves that he is right, I'm still going to say he's wrong because he said 20 out of 20 instead of 17 out of 20. So because he made that mistake, he is 100% wrong. So it's like saying if you get 80% of the test right, you still failed. How is that even possible?
So there it is. I mean, that's what you're talking about there. So there's the chart. Okay.
Can you zoom in a little bit more, because
yeah,
to make it more visible?
Yeah.
There you go. So, and that chart by the FBI conducted in 2019, right? That was the early 2019. If you see that, all that is blue. Okay, one red, oop-de-doo, one red, okay, and two grays. Right. So in reality, three of the 20 most violent cities aren't run by Democrats. So according to the Washington Post, Trump is lying, and he's wrong. But if you look at the chart, I see blue. A lot of blue.
A lot of blue. Just that one red.
Hell of a lot of blue.
That's one red.
So all the majors, and we said it here in MM Talk before, all the major cities in America are run by Democrats. Where all those marchers are going about systemic racism, all those leaders who are talking about ending systemic racism, all those leaders who are saying they're going to fight with systemic racism, live, work, spend their time, pretty much live in major cities, and those major cities have been run for decades by Democrats. The same party who is out there saying that they're going to fight systemic racism in America because it continues to happen when they are the ones in power. So it's like, is it?
I'm sorry to mean to laugh, bro.
But it is funny. It is. It is.
It's
so he goes. Go ahead.
No, it's like this article is so ridiculous because he's we looked at it right, and he's praising the FBI statistics. Look at this. FBI is amazing. Look at that. And well, okay, we used FBI stats like 2 weeks ago on this subject.
Uh-huh.
I mean, we told you, right? But then he starts questioning, right, how the FBI got these stats, and all that.
So literally in the article, he says the FBI's stats debunk Trump.
Right.
He said 20 out of 20.
Right.
But, in reality, it's 17 out of 20. So hooray for the FBI for accuracy. 5 paragraphs later, well, we got to question the FBI's gathering of the statistics. Really?
Yeah, here. Let me quote it real quick. It says one is that there has been a broad redistribution of the American population over the past few decades. With Americans being more likely to live near those who share their politics, young Americans with or college degrees have moved to large urban centers for work, education, leaving other relatives in more suburban areas. In 2018, from data from Pew Research found that people in urban counties were twice as likely to be Democrat leaning independents, and as Republican or Republican leaning independents with a 31-point margin. Another is that cities are less densely white. Let's stop right there. Let's stop right there. So if cities are less white, that means that you and me they're populated severely by minorities, right? So doesn't that prove our point in the first place? I mean, just think about it. It just proves what we said, okay? That who is populating these cities? Minorities. That means your communities are a representation in forms of government, police, and so forth. Los Angeles is on here. Los Angeles police force is 49% Latino. And we're talking about systemic racism in communities that are run predominantly by minorities, according to that sentence by the Washington Post. Don't take it from Eddie. Don't take it from Jaime, who said that 2 weeks ago. Take it from the one sentence right there in the Washington Post that just said that most of these cities are run by minorities. And we're talking about systemic racism. In 20
that is exactly. So you're talking about systemic racism in a city where it's ran by minorities and the Democratic Party.
Oh man.
And that's where I'm like, that's why the Washington Post of today is a sham. Because instead of holding the people in leadership, hey, these major cities are run by Democrats and they are violent. What's going on with that party? What is their policies that is making these crimes still be high in the cities?
Right. And that's where it goes right here. Let me just quote this last sentence, which is the one I really wanted to say. It says, it may be the case that cities with more crime are more likely to have Democratic leaders. Such a comparison, though, is fraught. Relying on the validity of the crime data, the metric used to establish which cities are included in the analysis, the time period under consideration, and so on. Wait a minute. You just used that same source to try to debunk Trump. But now that probably when you were halfway through writing this article, the information proves that Trump's right. Now you want to question the sources? Like this so bad.
It is. And that's where here in Even Talk, we keep saying, like, regardless, who cares of what political ideology you are? Look and observe how ridiculous this looks.
That's what I say. Step back, analyze it, look at it, and look at the argument.
Use your coconut, use your head, right? Because literally, look, it's blue. Like, the top is the 20 major cities, and on the bottom, you add an additional data which says per 10,000 residents, okay? So you're adding to the list of 20 on top. Mm-hmm. On top of the 20 most violent cities in America, 20, okay, are the most violent. Not the 10, not the 5, not the 3, 20, okay? And then the bottom, the most violent cities per 10,000 residents. So you're adding to the list on top. So the cities, the list on the bottom is completely different cities on the top.
Right.
And it's still blue.
Oh, man.
It's still blue. And then the article says that it's less white people in these cities. So you're saying that minorities are more violent and criminal?
No, they're saying that minorities are more racist.
I guess, because if there's no white people in the urban areas, then that means that we're racist within our own selves, between ourselves, I guess.
You know, like San Bernardino's on this list. San Bernardino just deemed racism a public health problem.
Oh, yeah, that's right. They did that. And yet, San Bernardino is the one that has, who's on the list.
And it's Democrat.
Ran by Democrat as a violent city per 10,000 residents.
Oh, man. Dude.
So it's kind of like, so the thing is that, like what I said earlier, the left and the liberals are trying to fight disinformation and misinformation, right? They're blaming this on Trump. They're blaming this on conservatives. But right here is a perfect example of how the left and Democrats are doing the same thing they claim to be fighting.
Yep.
Right? The same thing they claim to be against. This man literally is saying
that Trump is wrong because he got 1 or 3 cities, right, that weren't Democrat controlled. because he got 3. That's 85% right, 15%. Well, proof goes against him, but 85.
Yeah, it's like if you got an 85 on your test and the teacher says you failed.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Like, how the hell? Like, how do I fail? I got 85%. That's what this guy in his article is saying. That Trump got 85%. You know, in reality, 85% is run by Democrats. You know.
Oh man.
So it's just ridiculous how the left is so blinded by hatred, bitterness,
right,
that they're literally lying to our faces, giving us misinformation and disinformation. And they're trying to paint it as the truth. But if you sit back and observe what they're saying and look at the statistics and look at the numbers, you're like, well, that's not true. I mean, he doesn't want to admit that the Democratic Party has failed the communities they claim to represent. He does not want to admit that. Why? Because it is to admit that the party has its own problems,
right.
that the party is just only wants power, doesn't care about their own communities, in my opinion, and it would give a win to the Republican and President Trump. But since they don't want to give a win to President Trump or the Republicans,
necessary,
they're going to stand
and tell you that he was wrong because he got 3 cities out of the 20.
It's not ridiculous. So instead of fighting truth, instead of being honest and transparent, and you know what, this is the truth, majority of the most violent cities in America are run by Democrats. And instead of going and asking and holding these leaders accountable, like, hey, what's going on? What is going on? You're minority-run cities. You're Democrat-run cities, and there's violence. You're the most violent, top 20. Instead of holding those leaders accountable and questioning them, they're trying to say that the president is a liar. Like, where's the accountability? Where's the honesty? Where's the integrity? Right? If we want to fix this country, we want to fix the problems we have.
Look at the problem.
We got to hold the people in power
You can't
accountable.
fix a problem if you don't admit there's a problem.
Thank you.
And speaking of, now let's move, man, we got to move on this. I mean, we could go on this for days, but we got to wrap it up. So speaking of disinformation with information, AOC. Okay. AOC has told Telemundo in an interview that all Hispanics are now black. And we have the interview right here. But there's a problem to what she says. I mean, there's a lot of problems to what she said, but there's one fundamental problem that we're going to play at the end, right? But yeah, let's just listen to this so-called interview on Telemundo, which is another reason why we should not trust Telemundo. But anyway, here we go. Hold on. All right, so here we go. Here's AOC in her interview with Telemundo.
The Latino community has been very affected by this pandemic, and Queens and Bronx are a good example of this. Why do you think that is, that Latinos are being so affected by COVID-19?
Well, you know, there's a lot that we learned from the impact of COVID. One is that impact has been racialized, and the race that you are really determines a lot about how disproportionately impacted you are. African Americans have some of the highest mortality rates in the country due to COVID. But in terms of our Latino community here in the United States, we are bearing some of the largest economic brunt of COVID-19. We are experiencing the highest unemployment rates and job displacement due to the mass layoffs. And the reason for that, is because we are vulnerable and essential workers. Many of us are ITIN payers, or we're dreamers, or TPS holders, which usually means that we're the first step on the chopping block when people need to cut jobs. And it also means that a lot of us don't receive federal relief. And so what we're seeing now is just a crisis of economics, of health impacts, of structural racism that results in disproportionate impacts on Latino and Black communities.
And now that you talk about race, what do you think the Latinx community should do to stop racism among them and among other races?
Yeah, well, the first thing that's so important is for us to talk about racism within our community and how we are both impacted by racism in the United States and across the world, but also how it exists within our own communities. And a lot of times I'll hear people say, okay, this is about Black Lives Matter. What about Latinos? And I always say, Latinos are Black. we are Afro-Latina, and we run an entire racial spectrum. And so we have to have conversations around colorism, and we have to have conversations about.
Okay, I'm done. I'm done. Okay, let's begin with the. Okay, she says the Latinos are economically impacted because of the layoffs. First question and this is what you pointed out, Jaime. First question pointed out to AOC is who costs companies to lay off millions of people, and for example, here in the state of California, reach unemployment rates of 16%. Who was the driving force in those decisions? Was it companies or something else?
It was the stay-at-home orders enforced by the government.
So these are government-driven layoffs. It's not employee-led layoffs.
No, and like we said here in MM Talk before, the economic downturn, the high degree of unemployment is not because of a bad economy. Okay? This downturn is literally the result of stay-at-home orders, of literally closing bars, closing restaurants, closing hair salons, closing beauty places, closing small businesses, closing retailers, closing small shop owners, closing small mom and pop restaurants, closing hotels, closing, all these major things, laying off people because of stay-at-home orders, right? Whatever is deemed non-essential, closed. And guess who got affected by it? A lot of Latinos and a lot of minorities.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't because the economy went down. It's because literally the government said, shut everything down and stay home. That's why. So when AOC is talking about, Hispanics have had the brunt of how the economic disparity or have suffered more economic losses, it's because you literally shut down their livelihoods. And here in MM Talk, back in March of 19, we said we disagree with the stay-at-home order by the governor of California because it's going to economically impact the community, families, residents, and Latinos. Send them home without pay, with bills still need to be paid, with rent, light bills, utilities, services, car payment, insurance, all that stuff still has to be paid. And you're sending them home without paycheck, without any means of income, is going to cause an economic disaster. Eddie and I warned this. Eddie and I were against the lockdown, not because we didn't believe in coronavirus. It's because this is going to be an economic disaster. And here we are in June. And what's the first thing that comes out of this woman's mouth?
It was business fault.
Really? And people are eating this as, this is the truth. She is right. Latinos are affected because they were laid off by companies. Oh my God, companies are so evil. Hello? The government told the companies to close down and lay off everybody.
Okay, so, and then she says something else, okay? She's talking about how not all Americans get, and not all immigrants, right, get
No,
federal
she said
aid.
not all minorities get
Not all minorities
federal.
get federal aid. First of all, I got aid. He got aid. A lot of people got aid. If you didn't get aid, is because you did not meet the requirements. That means you're either an undocumented person or you make over the threshold. Okay. But here's the thing. When she said that, I was like, interesting you say that because right now there's a senator from Florida who just is trying to introduce an amendment to what Jaime and I thought was necessary when we said this in a live stream to help out those people that don't qualify. That senator is from Florida. He's a Latino. He's a Republican. Oh yeah, Marco Rubio. That guy.
Hey!
Hey, Marco Rubio. Okay. So while you all are, yes, we gotta help our immigrant community. Marco Rubio is already having it written on paper. So AOC, what are you talking about? Where is your legislation on that? Right. Once again, I'm like, okay. And overall, right? So we just broke down your economic argument. It just makes no sense. Why are Latinos black again?
I don't know. I'm still confused by that. Wait,
I'm
we're
like,
black how?
We share systematic racism, system disparities. You didn't mention health risks that are well beyond I mean, not well beyond, that are prominent in our communities. High blood pressure, all these things that are prone to be increased or make you worse when if you contract COVID. You didn't mention any of that.
Nope.
Or you just want to call it systematic racism. You want to blame business for layoffs when it was government policy that forced businesses to lay off people. And then you want to say everybody is not getting aid. Well, the problem is that you passed the bill that did not allow everybody to get aid, and now a Republican is putting an amendment to fix your problem. Okay, but hey, whatever. He's not gonna get credit. You know, it's not something Voto Latino or all these Latino organizations are gonna cheer about. Now
Exactly.
And overall, I still don't understand how we are all black. This whole segment has proven that Democrats are using misinformation to inform you. And here were like 4 clear examples, right, of how that is a complete and utter lie. Okay. Let's recap it all. You can't, if your cities are run by minorities, you cannot be claiming systemic racism. Just can't do it. That means there are other factors that are preventing people from achieving things. You're gonna have to look at education. You're gonna have to look at income. There's so many things you have to look at. It's not racism. Cost of living, all these things. You gotta look into it. You have to dive into it because it ain't racism, folks. Okay, Trump having an 85% truth rate does not make the man wrong. It's just the fact that he probably did not see those 3 cities, that one was run by Republican and 2 independents, and who knows where they lean, right? But all those things prove that how Democrats just want to sell you this race crap and victimhood over and over and daily and daily. And here Republicans, right, doing things, you know, they're trying to help you out and all this and that. And that's the other party. That's the opposition. So that's what I'm saying, Republicans. You could be a conservative, you could be a liberal, you don't have to be a Republican, whatever. What I'm trying to say is that the other party right now is helping those dreamers that and those people that AOC talked about, right? They wanted you to go back to work so you don't have to suffer for everything like Jaime said, right? And not only that, they don't control the cities where our communities are being most affected.
They can't get a grip on the crime.
And we in MM Talk, I have proven what drives encounters with the cops. Jaime has written verbal books on this show on what is going on. I have spoken on it, and you still want to listen to AOC. And you still want to listen to Nancy Pelosi. And you're still going to listen to them because you don't trust us because you guys are just sellouts. No, dude, we're taking the argument. We just took the argument from a Washington Post article showed you the evidence that is in the Washington Post article, and showed you why that argument makes no sense. And by the time you're done with this episode, you're still gonna say Latinos for Biden.
It's just the left is selling this misinformation as truth, and they're saying it with such confidence that you're believing it.
Yeah, you want to tear down statues for what? Is that gonna fix the problem tomorrow? Is that gonna help our education? Is that gonna fund our schools better tomorrow? Come on, guys. It's funny, and I was just and it's sad when I read a poll by Pew Research where a majority of Latinos, I want to say it's in the 70s, it was 70% of Latinos believe that government is the answer to their problems.
And that's because the Democrats keep feeding this. Univision keeps feeding them. Telemundo keeps feeding this idea. They literally, Latinos left the countries
to avoid that. And you're coming
exactly.
And now, because you have your native-born children who are been programmed by this system, now you want to say government's the answer? Are you joking?
Exactly.
Well, anyways, we're going to wrap it up here, Jaime. So thank you guys for tuning in to this week's episode. Please leave your comments. Let us know what you think. Does systemic racism exist in minority-controlled communities? Because, well, yeah, we just talked about it. So just leave your comments. Tell us what you think below. Please share. Please let your friends know what's going on. Please let them know what MM Talk is trying to do. And with that said, I'm Eddie Marmolejo.
I'm Jaime Moreno.
This is MM Talk, and remember,
we're tired of it too.